Well, good morning, everybody, to another Esport Friday. It gives me great pleasure to welcome my co-host for Esport Friday, Sports Communities Esport Guru, Cameron Osterlin. Cameron, welcome, and where are you taking us?
Thank you. Happy Friday. Esports. Can we change it to Esports Friday? No, never mind. Today, we're looking at high school esports around Australia. Something that's actually taking off more globally as well at the same time, which is cool to see that Australia isn't lagging behind. This time we're kind of keeping up, maybe even leading the way in some respects. So right now on the screen is actually the New Zealand regional finals from the organization META High School Esports, which is the organization started by Nigel Smart and his cohort at Legacy Esports, also Adelaide Football Club. So this is actually a couple of weeks ago. So the final event that they run, that it all leads to, has been postponed for 2020 for obvious reasons. But they're still running through a lot of the progression online, and this is the League of Legends regional finals that was taking place a couple of weeks ago.
So when you say the event that they were leading into, that's kind of like the esports stadium event where the players come to the same stadium, put it up on the screens, have a big crowd, and then broadcast to the world.
Let's go straight to that then. That's the Melbourne Esports Open, which is usually held basically right about now. So the event was either this week or next week, and it's been postponed until next year. So I guess they're taking a year off the physical event, which a lot of events are doing, I guess. So this is kind of like a destination event for esports in Australia. It's not just about the Melbourne Esports Open, isn't just about high school sport. They do a whole range of different things. There's competitions from all around the country that play out. There's Counter-Strike, League of Legends, Fortnite, Rocket League, StarCraft, all sorts of different games that get played out at quite a high level. And then also there's the high school esports competition. So quite a diverse range of things. It's kind of like a snapshot of all of esport all in one go. At one location, and it's developing into quite a big event, which is really cool to see. They also have a whole bunch of open tournaments on the day, which is, I guess, another way to encourage people to come and attend. And if you're not part of the elite esports, circuit or the high school circuit, and you don't have an option and a way to get involved, this is another way that you can do it. Come to the Melbourne Esports Open and get involved and participate, put a team in for one of these various sports. There's some fighting games here like Super Smash Brothers, Dragon Ball, Street Fighter. There's Halo, which people might have heard of, Tekken, Counter-Strike, of course, Call of Duty, League of Legends. There's even somehow a competitive Minecraft competition. I have no idea how that would work. You've also got some driving games. You got Forza, and Overwatch, which is another shooter game. So a whole range of different things that you can come and have a crack at yourself as well. As well, at the same time as all of the elite sports that are taking place on the big stages, and the high school equivalent as well, which all leads to this day, and where they get to crown, I guess, a yearly national champion from or regional even, because it's oceanic. There's New Zealand as well as Australia. So pretty cool event that kind of brings in everything that's esport all into one day or one weekend.
Cool. So, I mean, and that's very similar to a golf pro-am, for instance, where the professionals will play with the amateurs in different context, or a marathon where the professionals and the amateurs will be in the same race, or at least in the kind of. Triathlon's very similar to that, long distance swimming, etc. So that's again picking up and involving all levels in the tournament. That's cool.
Well, I think on top of that, there's actually a very common element these days with major sporting events, where you're trying to engage and activate the people that are attending. So it's no longer just about the sport. You go to the footy grand final at the MCG, and there's a whole range of different sorts of activations, from partners, from people trying to do a bit of hijack marketing, like all sorts of ambush marketing, all sorts of different things. But it's really just about trying to keep people engaged and adding all those different levels and layers of engagement that you can have on a day to try and get everybody that could possibly come to the event. So I'd say it's a lot like that as well.
Well, and it's just improving the overall experience, isn't it? And again, just picking up on that point, Andrew Walton talked to us about the Australian Tennis Open, and you think about how that's structured. Yes, you've got the tennis, then you've got a whole concert series. You've got those areas where you can go and drink and eat and watch tennis on big screens. You've got women's health and beauty is a whole section where you can go and get made up and makeups and made overs and those sorts of things. And they've also got esport options. As Andrew Walton was telling us, that wasn't about esport tennis. It was all these other games that you've got up on the screen. So it's about adding to the experience. So,
and I think with tennis as well, they're trying to launch their own brand and trying to get into the gaming space as well. So that's another factor to consider, because they don't want to be left behind. Because if you are a big global sport, then one thing you want to be doing right now is trying to get a big global esport of a similar variant.
Just going back to the schools, and and this is a question without notice, so I apologise, but do we know what schools are really participating and have kind of invested into the esports program? Is it the same sort of schools that would typically invest in their traditional sporting programs? So your private schools and your that are offering sports scholarships. Have the schools got to that stage yet where they're offering scholarships to attract the best gamers?
I do not know the complete answer to that question. I guess that takes a lot of knowledge about the school system. What I can tell you though is that Eltham College is one of the better private schools probably in Victoria, at least from my history and my knowledge of them. And they've got their own tournament coming up in a few weeks that's partnered with META High School Esports. I know a lot of schools are starting to offer esport classes as a elective or an activity. So I'm not sure if they're at the point yet of having scholarships to attract, good esports participants. But I definitely think that a lot of schools are starting to think about it and look at how they can best engage with esports. So there's quite a number. Let me see if I can grab it real quick. The number of students that were involved. I know there was a graphic here. I've lost it. Never mind. But I mean, we're talking probably 3,000 to 4,000 high school students that were involved in this competition last year. So it's not by any means a small competition. Probably about 150 or so different schools around Australia and New Zealand. I'm not sure how many schools there are, but to get like a percentage, but 150 schools from around 2 countries is quite a lot. So they're certainly engaging with it and participating with it on a big scale. But where that's going to go, I guess, is anyone's guess at the moment.
Well, you can guess it's going to grow bigger, isn't it? It becomes self-fulfilling then, doesn't it? Because it becomes more mainstream, introduced to more people, and more people try it, goes back big. So it becomes a self-fulfilling ecosystem, really, of creating participation, creating participants, which then create participation, which then create participants.
And we've been on this pathway for a long time. We're really only just getting to that point where it's becoming mainstream. We talked about it before, esport or just gamers in general are becoming a massive proportion of the population. The estimates are that we'll tip over 3 billion gamers in the world in the next 12 to 24 months. So that's almost half, if not more than half the planet are gamers. So, 15 years ago, when some of these kids were being born, it's not even really a thought. Gaming is the minority, but now it's very much a majority of people. And we're seeing some interesting things come about. I don't know if you heard about this story, but it was on a current affair a few weeks ago. A year 12 student in Queensland who participated with a Hawthorn player by the name of James Cousins and won the inaugural Stream King charity event, which first place took out $25,000, or maybe it was 50 and they got 25 each. But Alex McKechnie, I hope I did that right. That was a hard one. Who donated $25,000 to his charity, or I guess that was part of the deal, by winning the competition alongside a professional AFL player. But the story was about how he has dropped out of year 12 to pursue a professional career in esports because his father and his family recognized that it was now or never. He's at the peak of his ability right now. He's already in the top 100 Fortnite players in the world out of 300 million Fortnite players. So to wait another 12 to 18 months is just going to really, lose the opportunity for him potentially. So they thought that it's the smart job to, you can come back to school if you want. If you got a chance, take it now.
We'd never think twice about whether it was the right decision for a golfer or a tennis player who was in the top 100 to drop out of school. Poor terminology is if that's the negative connotation. To pursue the opportunity that they've got in front of them, we would never kind of think twice about that. And yet a gamer does it, and it's on a current affair, and it's still kind of news. But then when we look at, if we bring that back to last week's discussion, and we saw how the gamers are actually making money just by playing and effectively practicing potentially, and big money, and in some cases to the top end. And I won't say top end of skill, but I will say top end of audience engages, which may or may not go together. But as we've seen in our discussions, there's plenty of top end players that aren't necessarily earning a lot in some of the ways that those down the pecking order are earning big dollars just through gaming, just through interacting and engaging a community while they are playing. The money is extraordinary.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Alex has potentially is potentially earning more than his parents right now. So
just on another thing, I found it interesting. I was doing some reading in my old world of financial services that seems a lifetime ago that I came from. I was reading the comments that the chairman of Telstra made it might have been last year, when they were trying to justify a $5 million salary for their CEO. And the justification was that in the modern world, you've got gamers that are earning millions of dollars just by playing games, and then people were earning many, many hundreds of thousands of millions of dollars just by wearing a certain shirt or jumper or cap or whatever it is. And again, that comes down to their ability to engage and influence their audience, not the fact that they're a gamer. It's the fact that they've got a massive audience. So they're creating content that audience loves and then using that to influence that audience. And so I did find it interesting that the chairman of Telstra, which is, you almost can't get as far away from modern gaming than a traditional telco, is justifying salaries by bringing in the salaries of gamers. And I felt that there was a couple of things about that. I thought he was actually trivializing the value of gamers, to be honest, where I kind of am looking at gamers in awe, trying to work out how they create these highly engaged audiences that are willing to give them money for nothing in return.
Yeah, well, it's the perception of nothing, isn't it? Yes, it is. But it's a good point to look at and to bring up and to talk about, because it's not nothing. It's just that when you look at it on the surface, you're physically not getting anything. I don't pay you and then receive something in return. It's I'm paying you almost as a thanks for you giving me a good time, for you putting a smile on my face, for distracting me from having a bad day or something like that. Like it's not so easy to, I guess, look straight at value when it's almost in the eye of the beholder each time. Every single person, it's going to be different.
I must admit, I've been thinking a lot about last week's session, and I equate it to, and for those that didn't see last week's session, we're looking at the monetization, some components of monetization, and how audience are donating, for want of better terminology. But then when I kind of flipped it around a little bit, I saw there was no different to a busker on the street and people walking past and going, hey, I like what you're doing. There's $1. There's a $2. There it is. If I walk past and I like the song, whatever, then there's many, many buskers around Australia that are making dollars because people like what they do. They consume it in short bursts, etc. So I guess when I related it to that concept, I've gone, okay, I get it. It's just the song is the game and the personality.
Yeah, well, let's bring it to sport. When you're paying to go and watch a sport and sit in a crowd, what's the difference between that and going to the Melbourne Esports Open and sit in Rod Laver Arena and watch a high-level esport take place? What, really, fundamentally, what's the difference?
Or a concert.
Yeah, or a concert, or a comedian. Like it's all entertainment. It's all just a way to provoke an emotional response in you at some level, whether it's happy, sad, whatever it is. But it's something. Yeah, it's not necessarily about trying to get something in your pocket all the time for what you're putting out there. Absolutely. And I do think a lot of people are trying to come to terms with that when it comes to something like gaming. I mean, I still do it a little bit when I'm justifying the investment I want to make into a new game, for example, where I'm thinking about, okay, this game's going to set me back $100. What can I equate that to? Like, do I consider that a cheap night out, or is that like me going to the movies twice? Like, but the value that I potentially get from that game sometimes is in the hundreds of hours. Whereas
if I was you, I wouldn't be measuring it in dollars. I'd be measuring it in hours invested.
Exactly. Like, if you consider the time I've put into Rocket League, I'm not a professional. I'm nowhere near a professional level. You know, I'm in the top 5% in the world, but that's a very big bracket. But the enjoyment that I've gotten out of it, I think I spent $30 on that game. You know, and I've spent more than 1,500 hours playing it over 5 years. So I'd say I've gotten a very good return for the money that I've put into that. So, you know, as far as just entertainment goes, I think gaming kind of gets a bit of a bad rap, but that is very rapidly changing, and people are really coming to understand what it is. I just had this up before. This is Alex's community on Twitch. So he's a professional Fortnite player with 24,000 followers, and he's 16 or 17. So I think he's doing quite well to have that kind of following. There's many in Australia who would not be coming close to that. So he's doing a very good job at it. And a couple more things before we wrap up. The Intel Extreme Masters is also one of the competitions that's held at the Esports Open, the Melbourne Esports Open. And this is like a global competition that goes all the way around the world, hosting different tournaments all around the world for different games. You've got Counter-Strike, you've got StarCraft, and this is a bit of a list of all the tournaments that has happened recently. So this is one of the more recent ones where the first prize was $250,000 for StarCraft, which is a 1v1 tournament. So that's one individual who's taking home 150 grand for their efforts from a total prize pool of $500,000. So, you know, there is money to be made if you're good at these sorts of games. And StarCraft's an interesting one because it's been around for almost 20 years. So it's a very old game. StarCraft 2 is the second version of it, but it's, as a game, it's been around for a very long time. So that's part of the Melbourne Esports Open. So the high school competition, which we're seeing, by the way, you can check out on the META HSE Twitch channel, which is this one we were looking at here. So just type in META HSE into twitch.tv and you'll find this. And on the, what was it? The 2nd of September, they're hosting a Rocket League tournament for Eltham College. You have to be a student of Eltham College to be part of it. But these all provide exposure to a competition like the Masters. So when these high school kids are competing for the prize of like the best high school student in the country or in Oceania, they're then being exposed to some of these big teams. If I can get an example, 100 Thieves and Team Vitality are two teams. Oh, and FaZe Clan. They're big teams that go across multiple sports that have a lot of money at their disposal. And high school students are then being exposed on a platform to these teams where they could potentially be picked up and make an even bigger career for themselves on, globally, internationally. So it's the high school program kind of acts as a feeder, opening the eyes to students for the opportunity. It also exposes them to the wider gaming community. So like, maybe you're thinking about becoming a game developer. Maybe you're just interested in gaming as entertainment and you wouldn't want to be part of the entertaining sphere, or you want to be part of the production. There's all sorts of levels that it's opening the eyes of high school students to, and then exposing them to all sorts of different things like the potential of becoming a professional athlete in an esport. So those sorts of things are happening. One more thing I thought was quite interesting was that the Australian sports camps, not a place that I know of or know anything about, so I'm not endorsing them, but they have set up an esport camp for school holidays. So it's starting to become quite mainstream when there's a high school camp that you can go to during school holidays. So I figure I'll leave it there for that, but I'm sure there's plenty we could discuss about the area.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Cam, as per normal, I start the discussion knowing nowhere what we're going to go and where we're going to see and all that sort of stuff, and I spend 20 minutes learning from you. So thank you very much for another session. To everyone that's joined us this week and for previous weeks in Sports Community live streams, thank you very much. I'm Steve Pallas. He's Cameron Ustalin, and thank you for being part of our sports community.